coming, especially on a Saturday today. I don't normally do Saturdays, but there's a chap coming down for a one-to-one bonsai session, basically. He's going to be here for a good few hours. I've no idea what we're going to cover either, to be fair. It'll be totally up to him. So we might do some videos of the day. It'd be kind of cool if we do. So yeah, if that's the case, then I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see what happens. Morning, folks. This is John. Say hello, John.
Morning.
Morning. John, what do you want to cover today?
Oh, bits of everything. Soil, I think, is quite a big one.
Yep.
And then all different kinds of pruning, different kinds of trees.
Okay. Tell the people what you just told me a second ago.
So I got my first bonsai a couple of months ago. Gone down the YouTube rabbit hole. Just loads of conflicting information. So I just really want to start from the baseline and go through everything.
So it's hard pruning. We'll be coming back into old wood. And it's directional pruning, so everything will be moving this way. If we go for the windswept option, you know. Yeah. This is a lump of old Privet, by the way. That it was my ex-girlfriend's mum's hedge from a few years ago. I was just saying to John, I don't have the girlfriend anymore, but I do still have the bonsai, which is a good result. So yeah, we're just thinking about restyling this. Basically, it's a nice tree. It's an old tree. It's in a lovely crescent pot there, but the pot really suits the tree as well, don't you think?
Absolutely.
You know, but it's an unusual pot, and it wouldn't be great for a lot of things, but I think for this it's really good. Well. Yeah, it does. I'm inclined to agree that it is growing in the wrong direction. So
we're thinking this little one here.
Yeah, I think so. I think that can go. Yeah, I do. And I think it's little mate as well, to be fair.
You think this one, yeah?
Yeah, I do. I really do.
It's opened up quite nicely.
It's opened up quite nicely, hasn't it? Yeah, it has. There's still this little ear that's coming back in on itself as well. You know, if we're doing sort of a windswept, then we're
thinking straight at...
It's got to come off. If we're doing a bit of a windswept, then everything comes off. There's two ways of doing windswept, which I'll show. Remind me, and I'll show you the other one, because the other one is really good, and I really enjoy doing it. So I'd love to do one. Yeah. We'll have to do the other kind of windswept soon. This is a windswept, right? The difference is this is going to be a windswept where there is prevailing wind. Yeah. So the wind is always blowing in a certain direction, and therefore all the growth has to be in that direction. The other kind of windswept is where it's just a gust of wind, but on an undisturbed tree, and that looks beautiful. If you get it right, it looks stunning. Yeah. You can almost see the wind. I love doing it. It just makes me. When I couldn't figure out how to do it, and then one day I figured out how to. I was sat in back garden at home, wasn't I? Do you remember? Yeah. And you came home, and I were absolutely over the moon. Only with little elms as well. We'll do it with a little elm, but it was absolutely brilliant. I hope I haven't oversold it now. I guess we'll find out. We'll find out. So the aim of the game with defoliation would be to remove either some or indeed all of the leaves. So what we do is we'd get scissors, right, and we just come in and we would do not much more than nip off at the stalk individual leaves on here. So yeah, there's kind of two different ways to do it. Some people will take every single leaf off. Yeah. You know, and the tree will essentially grow a second crop of leaves. And the odds are, not always, but the odds are the second crop of leaves will be smaller than the first lot. But there's a question of timing. Yeah. You know, if you do it too early in the year, the next crop of leaves that comes tends to be the same size. You see what I mean? If you were to do it now, on this Acer, for example, the second crop of leaves would almost probably be the same size as the ones that... No, so there's no major benefit. On the face of it, there's no major. There is actually, but the major advantage would be back budding, because you've let a load of light into the canopy, so there would actually be some budding going on. Yeah. But if you do it very late in the year as well, so if you 100% defoliate quite late in the season, and by late I probably mean August, September time. Do you see what I mean? Then there's a possibility that the tree won't produce any leaves and will just bugger off to bed early and be unhappy. Yeah. Or what's the or? The or is that the think about it. You've essentially made another spring, haven't you? And you've made another spring right at the end of the season. So you've made another spring in September. Well, the frosts are coming and they're not far away. Yeah. So you've got a tree that's got fresh green growth on it, and then the frosts start coming. The tree doesn't have a chance to harden off before the winter comes.
Yeah.
So it's coming into November and it's got these leaves on, and it won't follow the natural autumn cycle. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And therefore the tree lingers on into the winter with these soft little leaves on, and they just get hammered and the tree looks really unhappy. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So actually the timing then is important, and the timing probably is kind of about midsummer, I would say. You're talking about probably June time.
Yeah.
I'm recording this, so please correct me, but I'd rather you didn't, but you probably will, and it's probably a good thing. But I would say probably about midsummer is not a bad time to do it. Now there's another way to do it, which is selective defoliation. Have you ever heard of a guy called Peter Adams?
I haven't, no.
Peter Adams was a really well known and really well respected sort of bonsai guy from, should we say the 1960s? I think you're talking about that sort of time. He was one of the early wave of sort of UK bonsai people, along with people like Harry Tomlinson and Peter Chan and various other people who I should know them. Dan Barton springs to mind straight away. So you're talking about sort of 50s, 60s, 70s guys, you know, and he wrote a really good book on bonsai with Japanese maples. But essentially what we're talking about selective defoliation, which is not much more than snipping the big leaves off and keeping the small ones. And that you can do all through the year. You can do it from the spring up into the autumn, but not quite into the autumn. Do you see what I mean? And that's a more steady process, I think. Yeah. As I say, it's a big Acer, you know. It is, and it's got a good thick trunk and all this sort of stuff. But it's a bit of a fluffy monster. So we've just got to try and manage that, really. Now I'll tell you what the thing is though. For an Acer, it's got quite large leaves. Yeah. Do you see what as opposed to some of the other Acers, they've got lovely small leaves, and that's just to some extent that's just the genetics of it as well. And there's only so much that you can do to change that. Yeah. You know, so when you're looking at the different trees and the different varieties, you know, leaf size is something to think about. You know, and the fact that it's got that larger leaf probably reduces the value of it somewhat as well, you know, because although it's got this, what's that, 2.5 foot tall, 3 foot tall, maybe, you know, that sort of size there, you know.
Getting on for 3.
Yeah, exactly, in a pot which is about 60 centimeters with a trunk that's quite thick, you know. So if it had smaller leaves than that, it would be a more valuable tree. There's no two ways about it. But let's try some of that selective defoliation on it, and we'll see how we get on. See how we go. I was about 12 or 13. Yeah. So my parents, we used to have a little garden centre in the back, but it was a back market garden, I think they call it. You know, so it was a garden centre in the back of your back garden. You know, so they used to do. Well, some of the things they used to do was dahlias and gladioli. Yeah. So they used to do flower shows, mainly Southport, but other ones as well. So they were putting up the big, you know, the big stands of flowers and stuff that you see. Yeah. And I was just knocking about with not too much to do really. But then you see the big stands with all the big bonsais on, you know. And I just got into it from there. I bought one from there, and I've been at it ever since really. But this is one that I had from back then really. So what do I want to say about it? Okay, so the reason why I wanted to talk about it actually was because we were talking about growing stuff on and planting stuff out. So from here, the roots are really nice. You know, they're not too bad at all. They've got a nice root spread and everything. But if you come around this side, you see that there? Yeah. That's where all I did when I was young, all I did was plonk that in the garden. I didn't unpick the roots or anything. Do you see what I mean? I didn't open up the root mass. And so there was a little square pot. And the little square pot went just around there, and it's grown to that pot. And because I never untangled that stuff at the very early stage, it's now become solid wood. Yeah. You know. Now I've got away with it because from the front you can't really see that, but from the back, it just looks odd. You know. Sometimes people think that sort of stuff is interesting, and I guess it is. But strictly speaking, what you want is a nice Nebari, nice root buttress coming out. Absolutely, you've got it. So I am taking steps to correct that actually. So what I'm doing is I'm scratching away at this with I'm using the concave sort of knob cutters, but there's different ways. What I'm doing is I'm going to scratch away at this, and I've took all the cambium layer off this side now. So there's still cambium layer on this side, but so I'm taking the strength away from that root, which means I'm encouraging the other roots to take up the strain. Do you see what I mean? But I was just concerned about, if that goes all the way around there, how much of the overall root mass in here is on there. So if I was just to cut that off, would I risk killing the tree? Well, yeah, exactly. So you could lose the tree. So as opposed to just going hell for leather and just cutting it off, I'm gradually removing this stuff. So I've took half the cambium layer, so I've took half the energy out. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. And then over time, I'll scratch away, and it'll just be gone. Yeah. Me and John are just attacking this fluffy monster now. So selective defoliation, not much more than nipping off the very biggest leaves. Probably end up taking off maybe about a half or a third, I think, overall, John.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to be.
It's plenty a mix of colours in here.
Yeah, it's a nice looking thing. As I say, it's just a shame the leaves are a bit big, but yeah. John's just nipping the flowers off an azalea here. So why are we doing this, John? Just remind the lovely people.
Just so it doesn't spend all its energy flowering, and hopefully it gets some new growth on it.
Yeah, because this is a bit of a fixer-upper, shall we say. So we've got a few dead branches, we've got a bit of a weaker tree here. So the last thing we want to do really is let it do tons of flowering this year. So we're nipping off any flowers that have already opened, and then we're going to take off any flower buds that are still growing as well. Really, we shouldn't let the azaleas flower every year, which is easy to say if you've got a stack of them, and if you've only got one, then my God, you want to see it flower every single year, don't you? So it's a hard thing to do, to sacrifice all those lovely flowers. But for the health and the vigour of the tree, it is a wise thing to do, which again is easy for me to say. Flowering's finished on the wisteria now, so we're removing the dying flowers off. And another thing that we're doing is doing some leaf cutting. So the technique that we're trialling, and we've been trialling for the last couple of years, is actually to take one of the single very large leaves that John's hopefully modelling as we speak, and then we're coming back and cutting through the leaf and leaving maybe 4 of the small side sort of leaflets that come off the major sort of individual large leaf, if you catch my meaning. So we're working his way around, and we're just coming back. Let's get in and see if we can do a really... That's a perfect one. Right, okay, right, okay. So that's one single leaf running down there.
Where's that coming from?
Right, okay. And then what we're doing, we're cutting and just leaving a couple of, maybe 4 of those small sort of side leaves coming off the main leaf. There we go. Start by popping that out of that pot then.
There we go.
No problem. So it looks exactly like the sort of thing you find at garden centres in terms of the composty soil, you know, the large amount of root lower down. So I think first thing to say then is with a lot of nursery plants, there tends to be a couple of inches of just composty soil just on the top. So let's just get your hands in. By all means pitch in, John, and we'll just get rid of some of that stuff off there. And then we can just sort of see what we've got going on a little bit lower down. Perfect. Old toothbrush is quite handy for that. Yeah, yeah. Like
got another one.
Oh, there we go. Smashing, right, okay.
I'll get it. He's dodgy.
He's a bad influence, eh?
No, it's the one you've got with the moss and the white pot on the far end. It's very nice. But...
I was just saying to John that we're not actually really taking any root off at this stage. So we've got like tons and tons of compost here, but there's hardly any roots in there. Can you see? I hope you can. Which is quite a good result really, because it means that when we actually come to take a little bit of root off, we can go into a more shallow pot.
Yeah, that's what
we're not being a juniper. We're not going to bare root this or anything, John. Sometimes with some of the deciduous stuff, and at the right time of year, we'll take a hose pipe and we'll well, you've seen people doing that, and that works really well with some things. With some things, it's generally a bad idea to.
Yep.
So with junipers, I personally wouldn't. Although I know some people have and some people do. I think with a lot of this stuff, you're playing percentages, I think. What's the percentage chance of me knackering something up? Or what's the percentage chance of me just damaging something a little bit? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, removing the correct amount of root is useful. And doing things at the right time of year just makes those percentages really high. Do you know what I mean? To the point where you can do things with confidence versus doing things with a lack of confidence.
Yeah.
Bit of a mix at the moment, so we're just doing a combination of different things. If you come to the beginners workshop, there's a tree included, which we'll do a bit of work on, but we just kind of grab stuff and work on stuff, and it just gives you just gives you the confidence to work on stuff yourself as well, you know.
And do you pick the tree as well? That you want to
Generally, well, with the beginners workshop, it's £60, and one of the smaller elms is included.
Yeah.
So generally, it doesn't necessarily need to be an elm, but it's that sort of thing.
That might be an idea.
We're in the way of
I just think I'm sorry. I'm taking that.
Oh no, it would be, yeah. Don't worry. I don't think we didn't get you too much anyway. So.
Yeah, image rights.
Yeah, there is that, isn't there? Yeah, there's all sorts of things. Want to pop that out for us when you're ready, John, and we'll see what we've got to look at. Okay, wipe that down, and then we'll see what we're doing. Doesn't look bad for actually. You know, when you use the camera, actually, it doesn't look bad from this side. Actually,
Pliers.
give it a squeeze with the pliers. Yeah, absolutely, and that'll just take that off.
Picture of concentration.
There we go. That's the end of the workshop. I think John had a good time. He certainly says he did. He seemed to enjoy himself. We covered some stuff on pines, junipers, azaleas, larches. We did some repotting. We did some wiring. We did plenty of pruning. We looked at a lot of the trees. So yeah, absolutely knackered. The shop is a bigger tip than normal, which is barely possible. But yeah, all good, all good. So remember, if you fancy joining us on a workshop, then the information's on the website. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon.